going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here to talk to you about Elric, the Ruby Throne, by a whole bunch of French people whose names I'm not going to try to pronounce, so here their names are on the screen. This book is from Titan Books, which is a company I'm not super familiar with. Looking at some of the other stuff that is from this company on the back of this book, it looks like they specialize in collecting European comics, most of which I have never heard of before. But this is a very short book. It's like less than 60 pages, I think. And I am a big fan of Michael Moorcock, specifically Michael Moorcock's Elric. This was basically my introduction to Elric. I read this like 15 years ago, and then I reread it earlier this year, and I really like Elric, and so I'm kind of disappointed that I was so disappointed with this book. First, I do want to throw some spoilers out for the stories collected in this book. So if you are interested in Elric, spoilers for the following stories: The Dreaming City, While the Gods Laugh, The Stealer of Souls, Kings in Darkness, The Caravan of Forgotten Dreams, and then the short novel Stormbringer, which collects 4 shorter stories: Dead God's Homecoming, Black Sword's Brothers, Sad Giant's Shield, and Doomed Lord's Passing. So this book starts with the very first Elric story, where Elric, he was the king of this kingdom called Melnibone. The capital city was Imrir, and then he had left the kingdom, and then his cousin was left as regent, and then Elric returns to Imrir because his cousin had taken Elric's cousin, his other cousin's sister, had taken her captive, and Elric was in love with his cousin, so he wanted to rescue her, and in the process of that, he brings the kingdom of Melnibone down. And that is in the very first Elric story. And then, spoilers, but this book ends with Elric dying and the entire universe essentially rebooting. And I have kind of hinted before that I felt like that was a really good stopping point for Elric. There were more stories that Michael Moorcock wrote, and I have no idea if those other stories are set after the reboot of the universe and then we're following a relaunched version of Elric, because Elric is one facet of the Eternal Champion. Just about every protagonist that Michael Moorcock writes is an aspect of the Eternal Champion. John Dacre, Jerry Cornelius, all these characters, Corum, I've talked about the Corum comics before, they are all different aspects of the Eternal Champion. So the later stories of Elric that Michael Moorcock wrote, I have no idea if those are set after Elric died, or if he went back and said, okay, here's something that happened in between these 2 stories, and then this is the beginning and end of Elric, but then everything else that came later is stuff that happens in the middle. I'm not really sure. And so I'm not sure if this book is actually based on a Michael Moorcock story. This was all unfamiliar territory for me, reading The Ruby Throne, because this is set before Elric comes back and brings down the kingdom of Melnibone. This story starts, Elric is sitting on the throne, and while he has something of an adversarial relationship with his cousin, I think his cousin's name is Irkun, and then the other cousin, Irkun's sister, is Simoril. And Elric is in love with Simoril, and then it was Irkun who basically took the throne somewhere in between this story and the beginning of this book. But in the beginning of this, even though Irkun is kind of taunting Elric, he's kind of goading him because he feels like Elric is a little bit of a pansy. He thinks you do not represent what Melnibone should be. We should be a little bit more aggressive and warlike, and that is Irkun's philosophy. And Elric, he is an albino, and he needs sorcery to give himself strength. He is always weak, just right on the verge of collapse. Simoril, she has to do some kind of dark blood magic just to keep Elric up and walking. That's something we find out in this book. And so I feel like, and I'm kind of beating around the bush here, I feel like I wasn't really sure, as I was reading this, why I didn't like this book. And then it occurred to me that this book is lacking a protagonist that protags. And what I mean by that is, any story for me needs a character who wants something and is taking actions to get what they want. It doesn't matter if it's a good guy. You could be following a bad guy who wants something and is taking actions to get what they want. That is what a story needs. A story has to have conflict, and in my opinion has to have a character that wants something and is trying to get what they want. And maybe the conflict is someone or something is trying to stop them from getting what they want. You look at the very first story in this book. Elric wants to rescue Simorel. What stands in his way is Irkun and all of Melnibone. Elric has to storm the island kingdom, tries to go in by stealth. He's bringing some pirates in with him to plunder the place because Elric deep down believes Melnibone has seen its day. It's time for it to fall aside. All I want is to rescue my cousin. So there's conflict there. This book doesn't really have any conflict. You have Irkun, who is acting against Elric. He has sent some spies into the kingdom to try and provoke Elric into starting a war with one of the neighboring kingdoms. So there are fight scenes in this book. We get to see Elric leading the fleet against these other kingdoms that he believes were sending spies into his kingdom, but we don't really know in this book what Elric wants. We know that Elric doesn't really believe, like Irkun, that they need to be a savage, warlike race like they used to be in generations past. Elric doesn't seem to believe that, but he is willing to let himself be goaded into taking Melnibone in that direction in this book. We do see him willingly allow himself to be manipulated, and he doesn't seem to know how much of a threat Irkun is in this book, but we don't really know what Elric wants. We know what he doesn't want. He doesn't want to take Melnibone in the direction that Irkun would like to see it be taken, but we don't know what he does want. He wants to just have a happy life with Simorel, and so like I said, I have no idea if this is based on something that Michael Moorcock wrote after he wrote the death of Elric and the death of Melnibone and this entire world. Did he go back and do a prequel showing how Elric gets the Black Sword? I don't know. But this book is lacking a character who wants something and has the drive to pursue what he wants. Elric just kind of feels lost in this book. He has the kingdom. He has the woman that he loves with him, but he doesn't really seem to have any desires in this book. And so, even though I really love the character of Elric in this, I do feel like in this book, he's just kind of a bland character. There's really not much to him, which is unfortunate. And I feel like you could look at a lot of stories. If you look at the Harry Potter books, you know what the story is. In the Sorcerer's Stone or Philosopher's Stone, if you live outside of America, Harry Potter is trying to stop Snape from getting the Sorcerer's Stone so that he can do something evil. That is Harry's goal in that book, and there's conflict because someone is trying to stop him from doing what he's trying to do. But then if you said, I'm going to go back and I'm going to do a prequel to the Sorcerer's Stone, and it's about Harry, and he goes to boring middle school, and then his uncle tells him to get a haircut, and then he does, and the next day his hair grows back, but you don't really know what Harry wants. Harry doesn't really have anything that drives him. He doesn't have any goals, and he's not taking action to get his goals because everything that happens before the Sorcerer's Stone concerning Harry Potter is not story. That's just background, and you don't have a story there. Everything before Elric storming the kingdom to rescue Simorel is not story. Now, in theory, maybe you could have done a prequel. I feel like they should have done a prequel set in between this and this. After he gets the Black Sword, after Irkun has kidnapped Simorel, you could do some story where Elric has to fight a monster while he's trying to find these pirate lords to help him rescue Simorel. You could do something like that. Or maybe later on in this book, we find out that Elric had adventures where he met this sorceress, and she was a queen, and then there was a sorcerer who was kind of her bed warmer, if you will, and then I can't think of the real word, but maybe you could do a story where he meets those characters. There are stories that you could do set before the fall of Melniboné. Unfortunately, all that we really find out here is that Irkun kidnaps Samoril, and then Elric makes a deal with Arioch saying, hey, give me some means of rescuing her. And then we find out, okay, he's probably going to get the Black Sword, I think it's called Stormbringer. He's probably going to get that sword right after the end of this book. So, unfortunately, as far as the story goes, there's really very little in this book worth reading. Now, if you are really interested in the artwork side of a graphic novel, I am guilty of quite often focusing more on the story and less on the pictures and the artistry of a graphic novel or a comic book. But if you are more interested in the artistry, there is some very beautiful artwork in this book. Unfortunately, a lot of it it does not look like the Melniboné that I envision in my mind. Most of the time, like in this book, there are some illustrations, and most of the time you'll see a picture of Elric. He might be screaming or something like that. So we know what Elric looks like. There he is on the cover. He's an albino, and he has a black sword. So we know what Elric looks like. And so Elric here, I'm like, okay, yeah, that's Elric. But then everything else, like in the back of the book, at one point they are talking about how they were inspired by Clive Barker's Hellraiser with the look of Melniboné and Imrir, and I was looking at it, I was thinking, this is very beautifully rendered, but this is not what I imagined when I was looking at this book, when I was reading this book. This is not what I imagined Melniboné looking like. And so a lot of that is going to be just personal taste. If you read this book first, then you might irrevocably, you're always going to imagine Clive Barker's Hellraiser whenever you're reading other Elric stories. And if you're okay with that, cool. For me, it just looked weird. There was a lot of this, I thought, I don't really like the look of this character. It's rendered very nicely, illustrated beautifully, but the visuals are not matching the visuals that I always had in my mind of this world. So unfortunately, I didn't really like this book very much. And that's a shame, because I would love to see more Elric stuff. I would love to see somebody do an Elric series in comics. And there are other books in this. There is Volume 2, Stormbringer, and Volume 3, The White Wolf. And I'm assuming that at some point they will start doing adaptations of the stories collected in this book. But this one, anyway, is called Volume 1, but it's not based on anything that Michael Moorcock wrote in the first, 3 or 4 years of doing his Elric stories. But anyway, I kind of hate that I didn't like this as much as I wanted to, but those are my thoughts on Elric, the Ruby Throne. I hope you guys like this review, and I will see you guys in the future with something else. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day. Catch you later.